Nothing. That's not good. Oh. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first inaugural. Way to go, Jack.
Off to a good start.
Yeah, off to a great start here on the first inaugural draft show. Draft Man Standing. This is going to be our draft show throughout time. We're going to do this for the rest of our years on YouTube, John,
Yes.
no matter how long they last. John, talk about the rest of our years on YouTube real quick. No, I'm just playing with you. We'll get right into Draft Man Standing here. We're going to start us off with, I know all of you guys who are out there listening to us, and so we're going to start off with the guys who have elected to not play in the bowl game, because this has been a bit of an emerging trend for sure. And something that, you know, there's definitely a lot of credence to why these guys are doing it, John.
Yeah. And it has to do with players, you know, trying to stay healthy, trying to make sure their draft stock is as high as possible going into the NFL draft, which especially after really the K0 for this has been Jalen Smith getting hurt in the bowl game for Notre Dame, which was completely, I believe they were playing the Fiesta Bowl against Ohio State that year, completely, you know, just the bowl game didn't mean anything. They weren't playing for a national championship. And Jalen Smith got hurt. Obviously, everyone knows, you know, injured a nerve in his knee, and he hasn't been the same player. He was, you know, a top 10 cinch pick easily that year, and he has not been the same player for Dallas since returning this year.
Right, and then the next year you saw Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, both decide, you know what, it's not worth it. We play too physical a position.
Yeah.
We're not in a playoff bowl game here. What's the value to it for us to play?
Yeah, and like you said, you know, they play too physical a position. The running backs especially, you know, have been looking to not play because, like you said, it's too physical and it's too easy to get hurt at that running back position. And that's a position where you're probably in the NFL probably for the least amount of time of any position just because of the beating you're taking. And there are so many guys that can take your job. And running backs, it's not the same to have a bell cow back. Like
right. And as one of the guys who sat out a bowl game this year, Josh Rosen said, you know, these guys play as opposed to his position, which I think he's gotten a lot of flack for certain things he said. But I think this was a very good point, which was, you know, these guys play in very physical positions. But also you got to account for the fact that some of these guys have families. They have other people they need to look out for.
Exactly.
And so, therefore, there's a lot going into their decision to not play in the bowl. It's not just, oh, they're being selfish, you know, for themselves. They do absolutely care about their teammates, but they also have other factors weighing on them saying, hey, look, this is just one football game.
Yeah, and I think it's so silly to look at a college student who's making no money playing college football. The university is making millions of dollars off them and say you're being selfish because you're trying to get a bigger payday for you and your family. Like, no, that's such a, you know, short-sighted thing to say about, you know, these college athletes who are laying it out there and you know, risking injuries that will affect them for the rest of their lives in order to get to the NFL.
Now, John, really quickly here, we got a couple other guys who didn't play in the bowl. I just want you to say whether you thought it was a good decision or not for them to play. Because I know watching the Ohio State game, I had a little conversation with my mom about JT Barrett playing, and she was saying, why is he playing? You know, he's got this history of a knee injury.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's definitely some reasons for him not to play. But for me, it was a great opportunity for Barrett to showcase his skills, national stage, and for a guy who's, you know, a fringe day 3, maybe he slides late into day 2, but that seems unlikely. More likely a day 3 guy. This was a very important stage for him to get out there and show teams what he could do. So with that being said, John, the corner for Ohio State, Denzel Ward, what did you think of his decision? Likely a first-round pick, but still, you know, he's not like a top 15 lock like some of these other guys.
Yeah, I think it would have been better for him to play just because he kind of came out of nowhere this year a little bit, like really these Ohio State corners have been with Marshawn Lattimore and Garyon Conley last year, Lattimore especially. So I think it would have been good to see Ward play a bowl game on a bigger stage as opposed to not to. But Ohio State had enough, you know, big games over the course of the season against Oklahoma, against Wisconsin, Michigan, that he should have enough tape out there that if people want to know what he's about, they'll be able to.
Right, and then Derwin James also.
Yeah, Derwin James was definitely a good example of someone not playing the bowl game because they didn't need to. Derwin James, we know exactly what he is. His freshman tape is so great. The couple games he managed to play as a sophomore was really good, and then he hurt himself as a sophomore. So he was healthy this entire year, but still, you don't want to risk a re-injury. And he didn't need to play for whatever bowl game FSU wound up playing against whatever team that they demolished. I think Derwin James is, in my opinion, the best player in this class, and I think even if you don't think he's the best player in this class, there's not going to be more that you learn from Derwin James by him playing in a bowl game, I don't think.
All right, and last up here, John, Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, Bradley Chubb, I think same
boat.
What I thought, with Derwin James. He didn't need to play. He was, a top 10 type player, probably the best defensive end in this class, if not top 3, definitely. And he's a guy who just does not need to put anything more on tape. He's a 3-year starter. All the tape is out there to be seen. Not one game is not going to, against Arizona State, is not going to change your mind.
Absolutely agreed. And so therefore, a lot of these guys made sound decisions this year. Yeah. Didn't even mention Rosen, but I think we both...
Rosen, I guess we can just touch on Rosen quickly. I thought he did the right thing. He was another guy who had injuries before, kept him out of his sophomore year. And that UCLA offensive line really was pretty porous, and they gave up a beating for Josh Rosen, unfortunately. So, again, I don't think he needed to play in another bowl game against Kansas State. All the tape is there for people to see. And I think at the end of the day, Josh Rosen will be, clearly the number 1 quarterback in this class.
What I think is interesting is about 3/4 of the guys who decided to sit out, it seems, over the past couple of years, have had their own injury history.
Right.
And so, therefore, it's not necessarily that while they did see Jalen Smith, they have their own track record that says, hey, you want to know what? This isn't worth the risk.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so, John, let's move into some guys who are playing in the big bowls, the playoffs. Who are some guys? Yeah, for sure. We got 4 very talented teams, as we should every year, and they are loaded with NFL draft prospects, as they should be. So, John, who are some guys you're looking for in these playoff games?
So, I guess starting with number 1 with Clemson, they're loaded at defense. It's not even funny. Their 2 big players, though, are Christian Wilkins, their athletic do-it-all defensive tackle on the inside there, and Cleveland Farrell, who's an absolute pass-rushing monster. I think he'll rise up draft boards as people watch his tape, and if he puts on a really good performance in the playoffs, then definitely, like last year. Last year he was absolutely dominant in the playoffs. So I think those 2 guys are important to watch. Deion Kane, Kelly Bryant's the number 1 wide receiver. Speed Demon, who also has really good hands. I think he could rise to the top of the wide receiver class this coming year.
How's Kelly Bryant's size?
Kelly Bryant's size. Kelly Bryant or Deion Kane?
Kelly Bryant.
I think Kelly Bryant's 6'2", 6'3", so he's about the size of the prototypical mobile quarterback that's been popular in college offenses today. But I think he's only a true sophomore, so I don't think he'll be coming out this year anyway. He'll be interesting next year to see what he does.
Now, on the flip side, we got Alabama, who they'll be playing against, and they, as usual, have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the football. You got to start with Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Right, Minkah Fitzpatrick just made the transition from corner to safety and has looked really, really good. His other safety there next to him at strong safety, Ronnie Harrison, a guy I'm really high on. Then you have other players like Rashaan Evans, their linebacker, Deshaun Hand, Deron Payne, a couple of linemen there. On offense, you have Calvin Ridley, their wide receiver, who, like Deion Kane, is going to be around the top of the wide receiver class for this coming season. And, down the line, guys like Tony Brown at corner. There's just so many players from Alabama that are going to be, top 50 picks. And this bowl game will be a big opportunity to see what they can do.
Yeah, even a guy like Anthony Averett, who
Anthony Averett, someone I missed.
Yeah, who's a corner who has not had a lot of hype over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
But is a guy who I could see going, 4th, 5th round, and being a guy who contributes on Sundays. And so, there's just a ton of talent on these teams that there are guys who are going to go day 3 that are going to become contributors that
Right.
you just don't know because there's so many high-profile names.
Right, exactly.
So moving to the other game now, you got Georgia, you got Oklahoma, Baker Mayfield, got the Georgia running backs.
Yeah.
A lot of talent on this one as well, John. Who are you looking for in this game?
Well, obviously, like you said, Baker Mayfield. It'll be really interesting to see how he plays in a big time bowl game. Last time Oklahoma went to the playoffs, I think Trevor Knight was still their quarterback. I'm not 100% certain, but it'll be interesting to see how Mayfield plays if he plays better than Oklahoma played against
Was
Clemson.
that still when they had Blake Bell?
I may have
at
been Blake Bell
quarterback.
actually,
And then
yeah.
Trevor Knight took over.
Yeah, it may have been Blake Bell.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is crazy because Blake Bell now catching
Yeah.
touchdowns as a tight end
Yeah.
on Sundays for the Vikings. So, things change very quickly here.
Yes.
But I don't anticipate Baker Mayfield turning into a tight end
No,
at any
no, I don't
point
think
here.
so.
But it will. What will be good to see in terms of getting the Baker Mayfield versus Georgia matchup is a lot of people like to say, he's in the Big 12.
Yeah.
He's not playing any good defenses.
Right.
Even though
And that's kind of true.
It's kind of true, but he did torch TCU, one of the better defenses.
Right. He played really well against Ohio State.
Yep, and so he has shown there is tape out there where he has performed well. This is just going to be another piece of evidence for Baker Mayfield to prove he can perform against a top-level type defense.
Yeah, and Georgia is definitely a top-level defense. That's the one thing about these teams. ESPN had a graphic that I saw not too long ago. I'm pretty sure all of them are top 5 in defense except for Oklahoma.
Let me ask you this, John. What is either the most exciting thing that you're looking forward to or the most intriguing thing?
In all the bowl games, just from an NFL draft perspective?
Yeah, in these playoff games.
Yeah. I think it's going to be Baker Mayfield because he's the quarterback that probably I'm most unsure about.
Okay.
Like Josh Allen, I kind of know what I'm going to get in Josh Allen. He's going to be a high-risk, high-reward type quarterback. Rosen and Darnold are pretty safe. Lamar Jackson, I'm a big fan of. So Mayfield is really the last of those big-name quarterbacks that I'm not really sure, what he's going to be at the NFL level. So I've heard some comparisons to Johnny Manziel, to Russell Wilson. He definitely doesn't have Johnny Manziel's off-the-field persona, which is a good thing, although he was tased by police back in 2016, I believe. So not a good look there. But he's definitely not Johnny Manziel, let me say that. But him playing against his Georgia defense, which is, definitely... I mean, when you look at Alabama and Clemson, those are probably top 2 defenses, and then Georgia's third, which is kind of insane. But they have some really good players in their own right at Georgia. So I think seeing how Mayfield plays against the Bulldogs will be a big part of his. One game is not an entire draft stock, but it's certainly a piece of the puzzle.
Right,
forward.
That's an important note. I feel like too many people start scouting now.
Yeah.
They see the bowl game, see the playoff game, and they use that too much as their evidence of what that player is.
Yeah. And I think that happened a little bit with Sam Darnold when he had that legendary Rose Bowl game.
I agree.
Sure, he had good tape before that, but everyone looked at that game as like this is all you need to see to know why he's going to be the next great NFL quarterback. And, I don't need to say he's clearly been overtaken a little bit by Josh Rosen.
He's had the most turnovers.
Right. So he's a guy who, is really talented and will be a first-round pick, and deservedly so, and has been better than quarterbacks in the past, like Mitchell Trubisky, Jared Goff, who have went really early, who have went number 1, really.
I also want to say really quickly, I haven't watched a ton of USC games this year, but doing a bit of bowl scouting myself, not trying to take it as the end all be all, but the talent at the wide receiver position for USC was better than I thought.
Yeah,
they've got some 80. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but 80. I just remember his hands.
Yeah,
spectacular, and with the amount of turnovers and interceptions that Darnold had over the season, it's definitely going to be a concern for teams.
Yeah.
And could be part of the reason he sticks around another year.
Right. He could. I don't think he will. I don't think he will, just because the opportunity for him to go top 5, and I think he'd be a top 5 cinch if he went, just because of the need for quarterback and the teams that are picking top 5. You have
This is a great conversation. Yeah. We will save this for another day, John.
Okay.
We will save this for another day because now it's time to get into our team.
Yeah. So we can transition here into two teams that need quarterbacks.
Two teams that need quarterbacks. What are we gonna call these? Team previews, team assessments.
I think team assessments is good.
Team assessments. All right, John. All right. So
or GM assessments. Maybe.
GM assessments. So
at least this week because we have 2 new GMs.
2 new GMs, right? And the 2 teams we're looking at, if you haven't figured it out already, are the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns. As John said, 2 teams with new GMs, Dave Gettleman and John Dorsey.
Yep.
And both guys who were GMs from 2013 to 2016. Both guys who I think were forced out prematurely.
I'd agree.
And were definitely surprises in terms of their firings.
Yep.
Especially at the timing, right? With Dorsey after, in a weird time there, I believe in the spring period.
It was like after the draft, before training camp.
Yeah, it was a strange time.
Really make much sense.
And then again with Gettleman right before the season started.
Yeah.
Which again, not exactly the time you want to clear house with your GM.
Yeah.
So John, let's save your Giants because I know you want to get to them. We'll save them.
With the Browns.
We'll start with the Browns. So
they're number 1. It's only fair.
Fair. So, when you look at Dorsey,
yep,
he has definitely, he had success. You can't question that with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
He had success.
I thought he was clearly the number 1 GM candidate.
And he's come in right away, and he's started to make his mark. Now, I gotta say, some of the marks he's made to the media about the players on the team.
Yeah.
I know they went 0-16 and all, and there's not a lot of confidence to be drawn from that.
Yeah.
But still, you got to give your guys something, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't just rip into them without any remorse,
You're still going to have a lot of the same players.
Yeah,
on the
you
team
can't get rid of all 53.
Yeah.
So, I just question, what's the motive? What's the benefit from doing this from Dorsey? He has a track record of bringing in talent, but I don't understand the point of ripping your team when you just walk into the door.
Yeah, it's tough to defend him, but I guess to play devil's advocate, I would say that you're probably trying to see which players are going to respond in a positive manner, are going to say, all right, I'm going to step my game up, I'm going to encourage my teammates to step their game up, and you're going to keep those guys, and they're guys that are going to say, all right, forget this, I don't want to play for you, they're going to leave, and, those are probably the guys that maybe you don't want on your team. The guys who are going to, just kind of give up when things get tough. And for an 0-16 team, things can't really get tougher than that. So I think that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to, find the guys that are going to make this team better.
And he does. He does have a tremendous track record of drafting guys who have had tremendous success, but also players who, have had a bit of off the field issues, to say the least. Marcus Peters, Tyreek Hill.
His were a little overblown, I would say, but yeah, he does count. Tyreek Hill definitely.
Yeah.
Chris Jones from Mississippi State.
Right. He's had a track record of taking a chance on these guys
and succeeding.
And succeeding.
Yeah.
And
succeeding so spectacularly with these guys.
Right. Absolutely, John. And so, but to me, what will be interesting is, one, does he continue to draft these sorts of players?
Yeah.
And 2, the reason I asked that is because does the culture in Cleveland affect whether he continues that track? Because the culture in Kansas City has to be much better.
Yeah.
I don't know firsthand experience, but just, you got a team who's gone 1-31 the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Who hasn't won in I don't know how many years.
They've never won a playoff game since they moved back to Cleveland.
Right, and so, you almost feel boxed in terms of taking guys with high character because, these guys who, are sort of, fair weather players, if you will, and go well when everything's going well, it's not going to work in Cleveland.
Yeah, I agree, and it'll be interesting to see whether he changes his draft style because of this, or if that's just his draft style and he sticks to it and he goes after guys who, he believes in, but maybe have some off the field issues. So we'll see going forward with that. But his track record is impeccable in free agency and in the draft.
Right, and I want to get into a question for you here, John.
Yep.
So he's got, if you're starting a team, you're playing Madden.
Yeah.
I don't think you could have a better setup
Yeah.
than he has right now.
Yeah.
He's got picks 1 and 4.
Yeah.
He's got several other extra draft picks throughout throughout his stockpile of picks.
Yeah.
And he's got almost unlimited cap room, it seems, at
Yeah.
this point. There's no one really...
There's no one he's paying big money
Yeah,
to.
exactly. Outside of
their
Jamie
alignment.
Collins.
Yeah. Jamie
and
Collins,
Joe
Kevin
Thomas.
Zeitler. Yeah.
So he's got picks 1 and 4.
Yep.
They need a quarterback.
No.
They need a lot.
Yeah. But starting at quarterback.
They need a quarterback for sure. So do you take a quarterback 1? Or is it too early to say?
It's hard for me because I like Deshaun Kaiser, but his tape this year has been really, really uneven, which I kind of expected. I didn't, I thought he was better than the guys they already had on the roster, definitely.
Right. Definitely more talented.
Yeah.
And as a guy who didn't love Kaiser,
Yeah.
I can say, unquestionably he had far more upside than anyone else on their roster.
And last year I said, maybe Cleveland finally got their starting quarterback and they were able to wait and get him in the second round. They didn't have to, move up or, do anything drastic for him.
One thing that I don't understand is, they kept Hugh Jackson, and I don't quite get it, but one of the reasons I really don't understand it is because of the way he handled Kaiser.
Yeah.
In a season where they clearly weren't going anywhere, the amount of times he jerked him in and out of the starting lineup.
Yeah, not you don't want to do that with your young quarterback.
You could have very easily had this guy sit on your bench the first 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And said, all right, for the last 6 games here, we're going to have you play.
Yeah, you're going to audition.
Yeah, you could have thrown out Hogan. You could have thrown out Kessler. You weren't going to win.
Right.
You weren't. It's very clear for me to say that now, but
yeah.
I mean, there was... Now, to be fair to the Browns, there was a lot more promise going into the season.
Yeah, I thought they would improve.
Exactly.
I thought they would look better.
There was a lot more promise going into the season than previous years. So I understand Hugh going to the more talented guy earlier.
Yeah.
But, once it was clear that it wasn't going to happen, which it was clear very early on, they should have at least given this guy a chance to develop. And I feel, as a guy who didn't love Kaiser, this was about as poor a scenario as he could have gone into. And so
I agree.
It makes it very tough for me to imagine that Dorsey's going to look at his tape, look at what's happened with Kaiser, and say, all right, this is going to be our guy next year. And so therefore, they have to use 1 or 4 on the quarterback.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll wind up using probably, I would say probably they're going to wind up using 1 on a quarterback.
Yep.
Whether that's Darnold or Rosen or whoever. Either of those guys I think would work well in Cleveland. They're both, franchise caliber quarterbacks.
And at 4, I'm trading back if I can to somebody else who wants a quarterback.
Exactly.
Just build up as much as you can because you're going to want to add, for sure, the wide receiver talent this year isn't as strong as in previous years, where it seems like every year for the past 3 or 4, there's been stud wide receivers.
Yeah.
But you're going to need to add some talent on the outside for whoever definitely. This new quarterback is.
Yep.
All right, John. I've dragged you out long enough here. Let's get into what you want to get into.
Yep.
Your New York Football Giants.
Yeah.
You've got the number 2 pick. You've got Eli Manning potentially coming back. It seems.
It looks like it.
It looks like it.
Not
now.
sure I agree with it, but it looks like it.
It looks like it. So, first question for you. What are you expecting to be different opposed from the, Gettleman era? Yeah. We had Jerry Reese for so many years now.
Yeah.
And so he had... It was interesting with Reese because it seemed like he had a little window there where he had a long stretch of drafting errors, but then he had a little window of like 1 or 2 years where he had some hits that extended his life there.
Yeah.
And then he reverted right back to it. So What are you expecting the differences to be here between Gettleman and Reese?
I think Gettleman is going to wind up taking players from the get-go who have higher floors and who are more coachable and who have fewer flaws in their game. I mean, looking at Jerry Reese's picks the past few years, they haven't been horrible. Eric Flowers obviously stands out as the guy who was the biggest bust, and even Eli Apple. Apple was a good player. It's just the off-the-field stuff totally, ruined him in the end. And there were some whispers about it when it was kind of ridiculous when the report came out that he couldn't cook. So how is he going to handle himself? But, his immaturity has shown over these past couple weeks.
And I will say with those types of reports, they're like the quarterback who, he's not a leader. No one shows up to his birthday.
Right, yeah.
So you got to take those with a grain of
exactly.
salt, for sure.
It sounds like something out of Draft Day, the movie.
Exactly.
But I think Gettleman is I think he's going to be more successful than Reese was, especially on day 2 where Reese had really struggled. In recent years, he'd been better, but he'd really struggled between 2009 and 2013 to get guys on day 2 who contributed to the football team.
And I will say, day 1 is where you really, you can't fuck it up. But if day 2, if you're having struggles on day 2, that's going to kill your football team.
That's where you need depth. That's where you need at least depth or one guy who can step forward and be a starter for you, especially in the second round. You need
contributors.
Yeah. And Reese hadn't been getting that really from the classes. But I think Gettleman's had a pretty good record in Carolina from what I looked at. He drafted guys like Try Turner, Andrew Norwell, Kawan Short, Star Lotulelei, James Bradbury, and all those guys, not all of them, but a lot of them were day 2 picks. So that's really, good to see. The only thing I question with him is his day 3 guys have been really... And look, you're not going to hit every guy on day 3, but you want to try and hit at least one per year who's going to be at least a solid backup for you, who at least is going to contribute in that way, who's going to be on the 53-man roster. I'm not sure I saw too much of that with Gettleman's day 3 picks. So that worries me a little bit, but free agency-wise, he's done really well.
I've got a couple of team-building discrepancies between the two.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think. So, one, you look at the offensive line. You notice where Gettleman has definitely invested a lot of assets, if you will, in the offensive line.
Yeah,
and something
he believes in it strongly. And Reese, defensive line.
And defensive line. Reese definitely didn't.
Yeah.
The other position that... And then if you look at the back half of the defense, you got your corners.
Right.
Reese invested heavily into corners. Gettleman did the exact opposite.
Yeah, until the very end when they lost Josh Norman and they were like, okay, we have no corners. We have to go 3 corners in a 5-pick draft. Right. Yeah.
But the most interesting position to me, as someone who's followed the Giants, not as closely as you, but very familiar, is the linebacker position.
Yeah.
Because you look at Gettleman, right?
He values linebackers.
He clearly does. Yeah. He's had Thomas Davis, Luke Kuechly.
Right.
He then added Thompson.
Shaq Thompson was probably the most encouraging thing for Giants fans who want a linebacker because they had Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis, but Thomas Davis wasn't getting any younger. And when the Panthers picked, I don't remember exactly where they picked, but they picked in the 20s or something.
Yeah.
And Shaq Thompson was there, and he had such a high level of talent, but he had fallen a little bit because of some injury concerns, some other concerns. And Gettleman had no problem snatching him up, even though maybe linebacker wasn't the best fit or wasn't the best it wasn't the biggest need for the Panthers at that time. They went and they got him, and he's been a star, since really, I think that was 2015. So 2016, really, he played really well.
Right, and Nervash, we're not saying that Gettleman drafted them, but we're just saying in terms of the difference between
he had them.
He had them, and he then went ahead and added a Shaq Thompson.
Right.
And for Giants fans, they needed a linebacker since, I don't know, Antonio Pierce left.
Yeah, Antonio Pierce was definitely their best linebacker. They haven't had a speedy, playmaking, coverage type linebacker since probably Kavika Mitchell in 2007.
The only guy who I remember who had promise was Devon Kennard.
Yeah, Kennard had some promise, but, and he was a 5th-round pick or a 4th-round pick. Right. So he was solid, but, he's just not a true playmaking linebacker. He can do some stuff as a pass rusher. and in run coverage. But he's just not a playmaker. And
right.
They need someone who can do that. Now, linebacker, it's a need, but the Giants were able to have, a top 5 defense in 2016 without good linebackers. So I don't know what Gettleman exactly is going to do. Gettleman has shown that he'll pick best player available, with the exception of 2016 where he drafted all those cornerbacks. He's shown that he will pick best player available, no matter what. So I think that definitely helps.
Yeah, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, and you too, Nervash, I know you're listening along here, that he did double up as well on the defensive tackles.
Yep, he doubled up with Star Lotulelei and Kawan Short, and then Vernon Butler was on the board later on, and he didn't feel like he needed to didn't need to add Vernon Butler, because Vernon Butler was an extremely great talent, and he went ahead and added him. And Lotulelei, I don't know if they re-signed Lotulelei.
He's still there, yeah.
Yeah, he's still there. So.
But it's interesting because Short ended up being the better player.
Short ended up being the better player, even though he was the second D tackle taken, and Lotulelei had the better rookie season. But Kawan Short wound up developing faster than Lotulelei did. But still 2 great picks. And I think, obviously, the offensive line had some issues, especially at tackle.
Yeah.
So
that'll be interesting.
And it's going to be the same thing here with the Giants. They're going to have issues at tackle. At guard, there's some, or in the interior, there's some, semblance of structure with DJ Fluker, Brett Jones,
Pugh potentially,
and then Chad Wheeler and Adam Bisnowaty had really solid games at tackle this past weekend against the Redskins. Bisnowaty could maybe shift into left guard if Pugh winds up leaving, but there's not a lot of proven guys there. The most proven guys there are probably Fluker and Brett Jones. Brett Jones, who played the majority of the season and looked good. And Fluker, who played a bunch of games. He's looked good here. He's had some flashes with the Chargers. So I think they'll be okay. But they need a left tackle. Flowers clearly not the answer after Bobby Hart kind of coerced him, and Hart now fired, kind of coerced him into just kind of giving up at the end of the season. And
terrible.
Gettleman responded by sitting him, even though he'd been this Giants starting left tackle since he was drafted in 2015. So clearly they're going to need 2 new, or at least 2 tackles that are not going to have started the season at left tackle and right tackle.
All right, John, before we move into our top 5 up and down here, I want you to give me, your 3 moves you would like Gettleman to make. And then also, let's answer Nervash's question here, which is, will they draft a QB high? So, the 3 moves, and are they going to draft the quarterback that high?
Well, I would say one of the moves I'd like to see them is draft a quarterback very high. And I think they will. I think they will. Maybe they'll wait until the second round because there are a few good QBs. And, personally, I'm a really big fan of Lamar Jackson. I don't know where he's going to end up. It's still so early in the process. Guys move around all the time. But clearly Lamar Jackson has not been a darling of the NFL mainstream media draft people. And, I'm okay with that if it means that maybe you can pick him at 34, 35, wherever the Giants will wind up picking in the second round. If they can get him there and wind up getting, a player that's, a high caliber player at number 2, say someone like a Bradley Chubb or Saquon Barkley, someone like that, then or Connor Williams or Orlando Brown, if you can get someone like that in the first round and then get your quarterback of the future in Lamar Jackson in the second round, who, someone like Lamar Jackson makes your offensive line better because, like Russell Wilson, they could run around and they don't need, perfect protection every play, unlike a guy like Rosen and Darnold a little bit too. That's what I would like to see from them is take a QB at least in the first 2 rounds. I'd like to see them take someone like Rosen. Rosen and Lamar Jackson are 2 of my favorite guys for the Giants personally, but Darnold is not bad either.
So, to sum this up a little bit.
Yeah.
You'd like to either see them go one of 2 paths here.
Yeah.
One, they take Rosen, 2, and then they go offensive line early second round.
Probably, yeah.
Or offensive line at 2, and then Jackson early second round.
Yeah, that would probably the latter is probably my favorite situation for them.
So the third part, what's the third part? What's the third move? Offensive line, quarterback. What's the third thing you add? Because this is a 3-win football team.
Yeah, and clearly there's a lot of stuff that needs to be replaced with them. I'm not sure. There's probably linebacker is the move they need to make third. They need to add someone who can give them. They don't need to add someone who can stop the run. They have enough linebackers who can do that. They need someone who can cover tight ends, who can cover running backs out of the end zone or out of the backfield, because that's been their biggest weakness for years now, is that they can't cover tight ends very well. And Landon Collins has helped them a little bit, but when you have tight ends lining up against linebackers, like Jonathan Casillas, like Keenan Robinson, they've been exposed often and consistently throughout the game.
Right.
So they need to definitely fix that.
Linebacker, coverage linebacker for the Giants. All right. So, John, moving back into our NFL draft prospects here.
Yep.
Who are some guys who moved up? Who are some guys who moved down for you throughout the course of this 2017 collegiate season?
Yeah. I would say Lamar Jackson has definitely moved up for me. I wasn't a huge fan of his after last year's tape. I thought there was still a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not completely done going through his tape yet, but from what I've seen from this season, he's looked a lot better. He's looked a lot more accurate. His footwork has looked better. He's, not running necessarily when he doesn't need to, but there are still things that need to be fixed in Lamar Jackson's game, and I think he'll get there. But he's definitely moved up for me. I wasn't sure if he was going to be the next Vince Young, but to me he's looking a lot more like the next Michael Vick, which is definitely heavy praise, but I think someone with his level of athleticism, which is absolutely insane, kind of deserves that praise. So that's one guy who's gone up for me. In terms of moving down, I would say Cortland Sutton has moved down a little bit for me. I liked what I saw from him junior year, and senior year, he did some things better, but I think he was a little disappointing for me in that his route running didn't really get better. Yeah, he's not going to run a lot of routes at SMU, but he really, just as a route runner, using head fakes, using moves, using body fakes at, the top of his route, he hasn't been able to get a lot of separation from his route running. He usually gets separation from, impressive speed for a 6'4" wide receiver, and because his catch radius is so large. So that that's another player who's went down for me a little bit in the draft. I think that those are a couple guys. Now moving on to the NBA draft, who are some guys for you that have went up and down still early? We've barely gotten into conference play, but who are some guys that have went up and down for you?
So I'll do a true 5 up, 5 down here. As John said, back to the NBA here. And, part of the reason we do this channel is because we want to talk about both drafts. And so we feel this is the only place you're going to find that on YouTube. It is the only place, for sure. So, without further ado here, we'll start with the positives. So, Trae Young. Obviously, you guys have heard about him by now, averaging near 30 points and 10 assists a game, which is quite simply insane. Yeah. I've never seen college numbers like this. Very rarely do you have a guy who averages 28 points a game.
Yeah.
I've never seen someone average 28 and 10 assists in college. It's just unheard of. And so what he's been able to do for a team that last year was one of the worst offensive teams in basketball. You got to remember, was a year removed from Buddy Hield, had lost a number of guys. And so now Trae Young has come in, and they do have a few other pieces that have been complimentary, but he's been the guy. I mean, he's been responsible for over 50 points a game, which is just insane.
Yeah, and I think, can you talk a little bit about where he came from? Because he certainly, for me, came out of nowhere. He wasn't even on the radar for
he was a guy who, he was on my radar, but not as a guy who was likely to be a one-and-done guy.
Right.
Who was probably a 2-year guy.
Yeah.
And was a guy who, was going to come in, be a good scorer, maybe around 18 points a game, get you some assists, maybe about 3 or 4.
Yeah, but
nothing like this.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't see this coming at all. And the part that's so crazy to me is, one, they're winning.
Yeah.
It's not just that he's putting up these numbers
and they're losing.
They're losing. They're winning, and he's not
they're a
only
top 10 team.
Exactly, and not only are these numbers important, but usually, like for example, his last game against TCU, an undefeated team who has a lot of talent, well balanced. He comes in. It's a road game. Puts up 39 and 14, and they win by 2 points, I believe.
Yeah.
So everything he did, they needed.
Point mattered. Yeah.
Every point mattered, and so it's not like he's picking up garbage time points or anything.
Yeah.
So he's just been absolutely tremendous. A guy who's moved into the top 5 in mock drafts from not even being on mock drafts. I feel I don't remember his name at the beginning of seasons. So next up, you got Jaren Jackson, who's a guy who was definitely, as opposed to Trae Young, was on the radar for sure. The top 10 recruit. But that doesn't mean he hasn't impressed. His three-point shooting and shot blocking combination has been tremendous. And, the fact that Michigan State, they lost to Duke earlier, but they've been outstanding as a whole.
Yeah, number 1 team now after the next AP ranking, so clearly they've done something right these past few weeks.
Yeah, and the fit that he's been able to provide between Miles Bridges and Nick Ward has been outstanding. They have a ton of depth up front, but his ability to stretch the floor and be a shot blocking presence has been outstanding. So, last 3 guys here. Mikal Bridges has developed really, really smoothly at Villanova. He's taken that Josh Hart type leap in his 3rd year there and has developed much more of his game. But man, he looks like a tremendous 3-and-D type wing.
Yeah.
A guy who at 6'7" can guard all 5 positions and play the 2 through 5 on offense, or 2 through 4, I would say, on offense. And his shooting has really come along this season, but obviously he's most known for his defense, his length. He's got about a 7-foot wingspan, and there's just a lot to like with Bridges, especially at the next level, as a guy who can come in right away and fit into a team. Next up, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Here's a guy who, if you thought Trae Young wasn't on the radar, this guy he's from another planet, okay? He was barely a top 100 recruit at Kentucky. And so at most schools, that would be a big-time recruit. At Kentucky, I don't even know if they'll know who you are when you show up.
Exactly.
And so the fact that this guy, in recent weeks here, has emerged as their best player, incredible. Absolutely incredible. 6'6" point guard, long wingspan, tremendous defender. But the fact that he's been able to get to the rim at will, it seems, it just taken his game to another level. His confidence is very high right now, and he's just been a lot of fun to watch on a Kentucky team that doesn't have a true star, a true top 10 pick. This is a guy who could go from, barely a top 100 recruit to a surefire first-round pick, a guy who could sneak into the top 20 potentially come June. Last up in my top 5 up here, got to sneak in a dookie for myself here. Wendell Carter Jr. Can't help myself, yeah. I just feel, I'll give you guys a perfect example. So, Saturday, Marvin Bagley goes off. He's got 32 and 21. It's outstanding. Ridiculous, right? And I can't blame everyone for wanting to talk about it. It's absurd. Wendell Carter Jr., he's got, without anyone noticing, 14 points, 16 boards, 4 blocks, and 4 assists. No one's even going to notice he did that. And so this is the type of thing he's been doing all season. You've got Marvin Bagley leading the country in double-doubles. Well, Wendell Carter's just a couple behind, okay? Yeah. And, he's been doing this all year. And the thing for me with Wendell is at the next level, he's going to come in right away. He's going to give you 20 to 25 minutes. He's going to be a tremendous rebounder, a guy who can finish around the rim. He's got great touch, and there's the potential for him to be a consistent three-point shooter.
Yeah.
He had a game recently where he knocked down 4 threes. Now, that's not the standard. He's only hit, I believe, 7 on the season. But there's just a lot to like about Wendell Carter and his potential development, a guy who I think is going to be a surefire lottery pick.
Yeah.
So, top 5 down here, John. Start off with 3 guys who aren't playing. Keep it simple here. You got Billy Preston, who's out for a strange incident where he had a car accident. He's healthy, but the school's been investigating it. They've held him out. It's been a weird situation, and was a guy who Kansas has no depth at that 4 position. Was a lock to get at least 20-25 minutes, showcase a lot of his talent, and as a McDonald's All-American, a lot of hope for Billy Preston. Since he hasn't been able to play, you fall. Yeah. It's just how it works. Yeah. You know, no opportunity for him to shine, and so other guys are going to pass him up. Same has been said for Austin Wiley, a center prospect at Auburn who's been held out because of that FBI investigation. And, you know, he had a lot of promise coming off of his freshman year. A lot of people expecting a breakout sophomore campaign. Guy who could have moved into those lower 20s as a first-round pick. Now is looking like a likely second-round pick this year if he's drafted at all. Lastly, in terms of guys who haven't played, Michael Porter Jr., guy who is probably going to be first pick, second pick in the draft.
Top 3.
Top 3 at the very least. Yeah. Now it seems clear that he's been passed up by at least 4 or 5 guys at this point. And with the injury, you know, you haven't been able to see him play. He'll have to prove during workouts that he is healthy. Yeah. And, you know, but the simple fact is this. He hasn't been able to improve. And so other guys have been. And when you have a class with as much talent at the top, he's going to fall.
You're going to fall a few spots, yeah.
So, lastly, 2 guys who have played who, in my opinion, have had their draft stock hurt. And both of them, in my opinion, for the same reason. They can't shoot. The first guy, Trayvon Duval from my Blue Devils. Listen, he can't shoot. I love the kid. If he could shoot, I think there's a chance he'd go number 1 overall. And you know, there are a few other concerns in terms of he picks up too many boneheaded fouls. And turnovers at times have been an issue just in terms of some games his decision making is outstanding. Some games it's frankly terrible. Yeah. That's what you expect from a freshman point guard though. But his lack of shooting, the fact that you know you have good shooters, you have bad shooters, and non-shooters. Yeah. He's been treated as a non-shooter. Yeah. Guys don't even come out to give him a respect contest, if you will.
And in the NBA, you need to at least be respectable. You need to at least have a threat, because otherwise guys are not even going to worry about you, and it really hurts your offense.
Once that happens, they don't rotate out to cover you. No. They sink into the paint, and therefore, when you have that defensive rotating, when you're moving the ball around and you have those 3-point shooters, and they have to respect everyone, it stops as soon as it gets to Duval. And it's been very noticeable when he doesn't have the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and that reminds me of something you said to me the other day, Jack, where you can have one guy like that on your team, but you can't afford to have 2.
Exactly.
And if, you know, Duval is, you know, going to, or if a team that has, you know, a guy like that who isn't really a great shooter, isn't really going to be respected, you know, you can't really look at a guy like Duval and really seriously consider him, you know, as a part of your rotation.
Exactly. And the thing that hurts Duval the most is this. Most teams at this point with the amount of great point guard talent already have one. Yeah. So if you're going to draft a second one, he's got to be able to play in a complementary role with that point guard. And since he can't shoot, it's going to be tough to play that complementary role.
Who can't shoot, or, you know, a point guard, you know, dishing it to a shooting guard, you know.
Right. It forces the ball to always be in his hands. Exactly. And if you already have a point guard who you like the way he handles the ball, it's going to be tough. So, you know, he may be in a bit of a pickle in terms of he may be limited to the amount of minutes he can play. Yeah. Especially with the new positional diagnosis, if you will, point guard, wing, and big. And so since he's clearly a point, he'll be limited to the amount of minutes he can play. Yeah. And that falls nicely to our next guy here, Robert Williams, whose stock has definitely fallen this season. A guy who came back for his sophomore year and was hoping for big things, but he didn't develop, quite frankly. And part of it is hurt because he has to play the 4 position, where I think he'll be a true big, a true 5-man at the next level. At 6'9", 7'6" wingspan, tremendous athlete, like 40-inch vertical or something ridiculous. There's a lot to like in terms of his physical skills, but But the fact that his shooting has not come around, he's shooting around 35, 37% from the free throw line. There's so many red flags there that say this guy is not going to be much more than a complimentary type piece.
Right.
And I don't see how you take him top 10.
Yeah.
And that's where, people thought he would go coming back to school. And I don't see that being the case for him this season. Now, teams are definitely going to give him, the benefit of the doubt that he's been playing out of position. But, I feel that the damage has been done at this point in terms of the lack of improvement in his shooting and skills as a whole.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think that just about wraps it up. Unless, Jack, there's anything else you want to cover here real fast?
I think that's it. That's our first Talking Ball draft show. Draft Man Standing.
Yeah.
John, anything you want to leave the people with?
Well, I think we should leave you guys with, we're going to be doing this on a weekly basis, so make sure you check in. Hopefully, once school starts and we know what our schedules are going to be more precisely, we'll have an exact time and day for you guys to tune in. For now, just keep checking your emails. We'll be in there once a week doing a live show and, of course, doing NBA and NFL draft stuff from here until those drafts.
Yep, and as always, any suggestions you guys have, let us know. We are always open to them, and usually we make those changes pretty quickly. So, that's it. That's a wrap from our first draft show. We're out. That was Draft Man Standing.